Hey everybody, I'm Uno, and today I'm going to be talking about this vibe, this visual vibe and aesthetic that I've personally been noticing out in the wild recently. Websites online are moving back towards adopting retro themes and interfaces. Brands are abandoning minimalism and have started using big, bold, loud, and colorful typography, almost ugly and imperfect looking sometimes. The way creators and influencers are presenting themselves on social media is starting to look more casual, more undone, unpolished. People are posting dumps instead of the perfectly edited and curated posts, and their photos are also getting blurrier and grainier. YouTubers are doing video podcasts in their hoodies and sweatpants, making you feel like you're yapping with a friend on their living room couch. And LinkedIn is somehow becoming Facebook. I feel like for years, everyone wanted the internet to look cleaner and more professional looking. So why does everything suddenly look messier, more chaotic and casual? I almost feel like we're getting the second draft of something versus the final draft. At first, I thought these were all isolated trends, but the more I thought about it, I realized that they may all be connected. Okay, so I'll start off by talking about the Millennial Internet. For the purpose of this video, we'll use the term Millennial Internet to refer to the internet era that started in the early 2010s and the design style that came along with it.
Now, there's a few things that define the millennial brand era. Millennial brands lean into hyper-aestheticization, so trying to turn ordinary commodities into design objects. Inoffensive pastel or neutral brand identities that lean into consistency on digital brand applications. And excessive earnestness or warmth in their tone of voice. These brands desperately want to be a bestie.
Okay, so you've seen it across many famous brands. Everlane, Away, Casper, Warby Parker. It's the design style that looks clean, muted, minimalist, and incorporates a lot of white space and pastel colors.
Millennial minimalism was all about being clean, neutral, white space, thin font, beige everything.
So there's been a few terms thrown around to label this type of design style. It's been labeled as Airspace, blanding, millennial minimalism, Airbnb-core, and startup sans. Airspace is a broader term coined by journalist Kyle Chaka for how cafes, Airbnbs, and co-working spaces around the world started looking identical thanks to Instagram and the rise of globalization.
If you saw these videos without any context, you would probably find it almost impossible to pinpoint where in the world I filmed them. This is a concept called Airspace. Airspace is a design concept that comments on the fact that with globalization and technology, all of our spaces are starting to look exactly the same. Some hallmarks of Airspace are things like exposed brick, industrial hanging lighting, more recently the neon word signs like I showed in my intro video. Design is losing a lot of its character, and very quickly these generic non-places are becoming the norm instead of the exception. It also touches upon how Airbnb has accelerated Airspace. A lot of Airbnbs have the exact same vibe of this sort of mid-century modern IKEA, not a lot of clutter, minimalist feel where you know you're gonna get the HGTV and the, Nespresso machine. And because of social media and the internet, we're seeing this happen all over the world, the sameness in restaurants and design and cafes. And if left unchecked, we're going to end up with these very generic cities and spaces that are devoid of the character that made them so special. But since they're familiar, they'll be very comfortable for their users.
Blanding, on the other hand, is a term used to describe a bunch of VC-backed direct-to-consumer brands who all converged on the same sans-serif minimal visual identity. In his 2020 Bloomberg piece, Ben Schott questions why startups are all following this identical look and feel and tone of voice. Essentially, brands around this time all followed a single visual playbook and vibe, both aesthetically and design-wise. When it comes to web design, I want to touch on Squarespace and how I think it accurately represented what the millennial internet was seeking out. Squarespace was one of the first website builders that offered professional-looking templates with no technical skills required whatsoever. The company wasn't competing on pricing or features. They were designed first from the very beginning, offering a wide selection of white space heavy, muted, neutral palette, modular, and cohesive templates to choose from. You could essentially get a polished looking website up in minutes. And considering the fact that they ran Super Bowl ads every year from 2014, I think it's safe to say that that was a clear signal that having a professional looking website had become an aspirational and mainstream marketed idea. I don't think Squarespace just reflected this design trend. I think it accelerated it. So suddenly anyone could launch a website that looked like it belonged in a Silicon Valley pitch deck, and professionalism became became a template. Okay, so around the same time, influencers were expressing themselves through their perfectly curated Instagram accounts. Their images were, perfectly selected, perfectly posed, and heavily edited with a bunch of visco filters. Bloggers were even following a specific naming convention for their blogs.
In 2011 to around maybe 2013, the names that these girlies were choosing for their blogs was such a specific vibe. I don't know if Cupcakes and Cashmere was like one of the first ones to do this, but once she got big, everyone was naming their blogs like blank and blank. And it always had to do with like a peony. It was like popcorn and peony. It's like, what the fuck does that even mean? Or there were the girlies that were like the blank blank. And it wouldn't make sense. It'd be like the gilded sparrow or like the rustic ravioli. And it's like, okay, what's rustic about you? You literally live in Manhattan.
Overall, it seemed like everyone optimized for professionalism. Brands wanted to look chic. Creators and influencers were striving to achieve this cookie cutter look and feel. They all wanted to fit into this mold. Kyle Chaka goes deeper into this aspect of sameness in his book, Filter World, How Algorithms Flatten Culture, which goes into how algorithmic platforms have trained millions of independent, unconnected people to develop the same identical taste, which in turn has led to our experiences and choices being dictated by these platforms. So I wanted to share a quote that I really liked from his book. Online, users are often insulated from views and cultures that clash with their own. The overall digital environment is dictated by tech companies with ruthlessly capitalist, expansionary motives which do not provide the most fertile ground for culture. While the magazine fashion editor may periodically use their ability to pick out and promote a previously unheard voice, the algorithmic feed never will. It can only iterate on established engagement. We users have less chance of encountering a shockingly new thing and deciding for ourselves if we like it. And the next quote that I want to call out is, if you don't have to think too much about the art you're consuming because it's so bland, you don't need to worry about if it truly represents you or not. I think these quotes highlight how the internet has slowly trained us towards sameness. Platforms reward familiarity over novelty, so we're exposed to increasingly similar aesthetics and opinions. And when everything is designed to be immediately appealing, we stop asking ourselves an important question. Do I actually like this, or was I simply shown it enough times to believe I do? Maybe that's why for so long, everything online started to feel more or less kind of the same. Different brands, different people, different products. Somehow they all landed on the exact same look. For around a decade, this was just what the internet looked like. Professional, optimized, interchangeable. But recently, I started noticing something different. The first time I noticed things shifting was not actually on a website, but actually on Instagram when I was looking for inspiration online to build my personal website. I noticed that there was a lot of content out there that was memorializing how websites looked and felt in the early 2000s. I've noticed that retro designs are coming back. I've been seeing a lot of old Windows 95 visuals. I don't know, I guess the early internet style is considered vintage now. I've been noticing a lot of Chrome, neon, maximalist UI. Figma released a list of web design trends this year, and those that made it on the list included vibrant color palettes, bold typography, retrofuturism, and maximalism. And people have even been seeking out whimsical experiences online. I think this just goes to show how we're missing what the internet looked and felt like back then. Aside from web design, brands are also moving away from polished branding. More funky typography, maximalism, and loud, bold colors are being used by consumer brands these days. Things are looking messier and more scattered and more chaotic and random. In a way, it kind of reminds me of the Harajuku style on the streets of Tokyo. So bright colors, neon lights, all in your face. The New York Times recently coined the term hypergoo to describe the glitchy, gloppy, maximalist look that we've been seeing more of these days. Something else that I've noticed is that the quality of photos being shared online has changed. I was scrolling on Instagram and one day I realized that a bunch of my friends have started posting blurry photos. Both film cameras and old school digital cameras, aka digicams, are also making a comeback. And if you don't have a film camera or a digicam, you can apply a pixelated filter to make your photos look like it was taken on one. Editing your photos to make it look like it was taken on an old Nokia phone is currently very in. Adding grainy filters, fuzzy noise edits. It's ironic since most smartphones nowadays have very advanced camera quality and capabilities. You can essentially take National Geographic quality images on your phone. In the era of perfect smartphone photos, people are choosing to add flaws back into their photos. So in addition to that, I've also noticed that creators are moving away from polished branding and are being more real and authentic online. They're presenting a more casual front. I think that Alex Earl is a good example of this. She shares her messy dorm room on camera, posts a lot of get ready with me videos, filming herself like she's FaceTiming a friend rather rather than performing.
Alex Earl's 1.2 million followers are obsessed with her because she is literally the opposite of what a typical influencer is. For example, here she's showing her pigsty of a bedroom.
I'm embarrassed right now. This is still in bed, and I really didn't leave the room clean. They probably saw this and was like,
Here she is admitting that she's had breast implants and she owns it. The Instagram era of perfect Photoshopped lives where everything you do is perfect and beautiful is over. If you want to be a viral account on TikTok, you've got to be imperfect, open, honest, authentic. People are also over selfish influencer behavior. Alex Earl is like a Barbie, but who's everybody's best friend. She's giving away her clothes to people who can't afford them.
get really expensive. So if you can't afford it, send me a DM on Instagram. I will literally just ship them to you.
And she's going out and volunteering her time to read books to children. And if there's one thing you take away from this video, understand this. The thing that might be holding you back from growth on TikTok is you're trying to be too good. So take your good ideas and literally do the opposite.
Being authentic and open and honest.
Just start posting. Some people want to be too perfect. They want to wait till the post is perfect. Just make something and post it, even if you're imperfect. And if you're imperfect, it's probably going to do better on TikTok anyway. Look at Alex Earl. She was just a regular college student one day, and the next day she started just posting on TikTok, not waiting to be perfect, just being her real, natural, authentic self, and people are obsessed with her.
Celebrities are not just presenting their best selves online. They're posting airport photos, bare-faced selfies. They're essentially becoming more relatable online. The Instagram photo dump trend is still going strong, thanks to the platform increasing their carousel limit to up to 20 photos in 2024. Again, moving away from the one perfect photo era that the platform initially built its identity on. It's now the norm to showcase the in-between moments of your lives as well, and not just a perfect glam shot. Another observation I have is that when I go on LinkedIn, I notice that people are now sharing personal life stories and anecdotes. What once was a place exclusively for professional development has become a platform where people talk about the dogs they're fostering, how it's their kid's first day of school. Some guy even wrote an elaborate post on how his engagement tied back to building a strong startup team. I don't really know how I feel about that. It's become more of a social sharing platform similar to the likes of Facebook and MySpace. Essentially, people are showing their personality more on professional platforms, both in work-appropriate ways and not so work-appropriate ways. Overall, it seems like people are becoming, or at least they're trying to become, way more authentic online. A new era of unfiltered expression has entered the chat. Okay, so what's the reason behind the shift? Why is our current generation romanticizing technology that we've never used before? Why does ugly design suddenly feel premium? I don't think there's one specific answer to that. I think a few cultural shifts are happening simultaneously, which I'll go into. Okay, so my first theory is that AI has changed the value of creativity. These days, image generation platforms can make logos and images, write copy for you in a bunch of different tones and voices, create beautiful slide decks and designs, all in the snap of a finger, which means that polish is no longer scarce, and having that human touch and feel is. Because if AI can generate a beautiful Squarespace-style site in minutes, then the internet may be entering a phase where personality becomes more valuable than something that looks refined. AI-generated design has made that minimalist, frictionless smoothness feel suspicious rather than impressive. I think that when everyone with a laptop and internet access can make something beautiful, beauty stops being enough, right? It's now very accessible to make a professional looking website or logo, and it's no longer a status symbol. This notion has also been shared by others online. Studio 2AM wrote an article where they mention Y2K maximalism functions as an anti-AI signal in a moment when frictionless clean work has become associated with generated output. Designers who want their work to read as deliberate and constructed are reaching for a visual design that is almost by definition impossible to mistake for something a prompt produced. Shreya Murthy, the chief executive of Partiful, said that for us and for a lot of companies, we think that loud and messy and customizable and honestly an unserious aesthetic, that's how you prove a human actually made this. When I go on LinkedIn now, I feel like most of the posts and articles I come across are all AI generated. So I think the pendulum has really swung back. We're now leaning more into what makes us human again, and that's being expressed online and in branding. By including imperfections and quirks, personal stories and inside jokes, these become signals of human creation. It's what distinguishes our work from what's machine model made. Execution is becoming cheaper, so distinction and taste is becoming the competitive advantage. Okay, so my second theory is simply nostalgia. We miss what's old. That can be seen in the rise of thrifting. Even wearing wired earphones are back in style. The old internet felt exploratory. People posted because they wanted to share something and not because they were optimizing for engagement. Photos were blurry because that's just how cameras looked at the time. And maybe we're not nostalgic for the technology itself. We're nostalgic for a version of the internet that felt smaller, weirder, and less performative. We miss how that technology used to make us feel. It's interesting. I noticed that a lot of these trends involve adding friction back into the experience. For example, wired headphones got tangled, older websites loaded slower, analog cameras require more effort than simply, clicking a button on your phone. It's almost like inconvenience has become a part of the appeal. Friction maxing is also a term that was coined earlier this year, which, according to Wikipedia, is the practice of intentionally choosing less convenient options in daily life to build tolerance for discomfort, resist technology-driven ease, and preserve what proponents describe as meaningful human experiences. Being offline and rejecting modern technology is now a trend. After years of being chronically online, we've come to realize how unhealthy it can be, and now recognize that these platforms are built to make us addicted to them. So as a result, we've started taking action to minimize our time on screens. There are even these tools out there that purposely brick your phone and prevent you from accessing apps for a set amount of time. And maybe that's why bad design and friction suddenly feels refreshing. We are nostalgic for simpler times. Okay, my third and final theory is trend cycles. Every generation rejects the last one. We grew up surrounded by a dominant style, and then one day that style becomes boring. So the next generation rejects it. It's a form of rebellion in a way. I remember when I was a kid, I used to scoff at my mom's Peter Pan blouse, or like Peter Pan collared blouse. I just thought it looked really old, super old fashioned, and that only grandmas wore it. And now it's considered vintage and is going for $90 a piece on Depop. Minimalism dominated the internet for over a decade. Everything looked clean, premium, and polished, but eventually everything started looking like that. So it didn't feel very premium or special anymore. It didn't get an ooh and ah, so fancy reaction out of you anymore. And at the end of the day, we are humans and we get bored of things. So when everyone started following the same rules, breaking those set rules became interesting again. And again, this has occurred throughout the history of human time. The ornate Victorian era gave way to modernism. Modernism was eventually rejected by postmodernism, and minimalism became maximalism. Fashion constantly swings between oversized and fitted silhouettes. It's just what we do as humans. Culture almost never moves in a straight line. What's old one day will become new again. So maybe ugly design isn't ugly. It's just the new. Okay, but here's the irony. I have a counter argument to present to you. Many of these ugly designs are actually very intentional. They're just carefully art directed to look accidental. Just like how natural makeup often takes more effort than glamorous makeup, or how some brands spend weeks designing a logo to look like it was made in Microsoft Paint in 5 minutes. There's been a great migration to the return of amateurism, regardless of whether or not they are actually amateurs. Media scholar Dr. Crystal Abedin calls it calibrated amateurism. It's the idea that creators intentionally construct the appearance of authenticity, carefully designing content to feel casual, spontaneous, and unfiltered. In other words, authenticity becomes another aesthetic. So is amateurism just the new trend? Can authenticity exist when everyone knows you're purposely putting on an authentic front? Can you look unintentionally or intentionally unintentional? These are all questions to ponder. Okay, so to wrap things up, because whether it's genuine or performed, the fact that we're trying to look more human and are trying to inject more personality into how we express ourselves, it all says something. For years, the internet rewarded polish. However, now it seems to reward personality. And again, maybe that's because AI can imitate polish, but it still struggles to imitate a lived human experience. Your weird sense of humor, your oddly specific references, your mistakes, your tastes. And remember, we don't want the world to become monotone. At least I don't want that. We want it filled with multicolored, vibrant, and varied things. And in my opinion, I think it's super important to protect your taste and not let algorithms and optimization flatten that. The internet spent 20 years teaching us how to look more professional, and AI may end up teaching us how valuable it is to look like ourselves again. All right, everybody, that is the end of my video. I hope you enjoyed it.